Living in a van means constantly battling a tiny fridge and limited power. But what if the ultimate off-grid mobile lifestyle was already perfected in the 1800s? Here is why Mennonite food is the ultimate survivalist secret for modern digital nomads. I found this out the hard way outside Quartzsite, Arizona, in July, 3 days into a van trip I'd promised my girlfriend would be relaxing. I just spent $640 on a solar and fridge combo, the box called Complete, and by 2 in the afternoon that fridge was blowing warm air onto a full pound of butter that had gone from solid to soup. The box that called itself Complete had, by day 3, completed nothing. $40 of groceries gone in under 6 hours, and my power bank was sitting at 9% with 6 hours of driving still ahead of us. My girlfriend, to her enormous credit, didn't say a word. She just handed me her phone, open to a comment under one of those van life food videos, from someone whose grandmother's family never owned a refrigerator in their life and never lost a pound of butter to a heat wave. That comment is the entire reason this video exists. Because here's the part nobody mentions when you're shopping for van life gear. The industry selling you solar panels and fridges rated to survive a desert in July is, underneath it all, a business built around solving a problem that a group of people already solved for free more than 150 years ago, while doing something considerably harder than a summer road trip. Mennonite communities crossing the Russian steppe in the 1870s and later settling the prairies of Kansas and Manitoba were living the original van life. Everything they owned traveled with them. There was no outlet at the next campsite, no gas station generator, and no returning a defective cooler for a refund. And they fed entire families for months at a stretch, without a single watt of electricity. So here's what those communities did instead, and what it would actually cost you to copy them today. The number is close to 0. The channels that dominate van life content right now, cheap RV living among them, will happily walk you through a full solar build-out, and to their credit, the honest ones admit this isn't cheap. Their own build, advertised as complete for under $500, took the creator days of part hunting and comparison shopping to hit that number, and it's considered the budget option in the space. Most van lifers spend closer to $800 or $1,000 once you add a proper 12-volt compressor fridge, sold under names like ICECO or SetPower, stacked on top of a power station like the Bluetti units that show up in half these builds. That's the entry fee just to keep milk cold. It says nothing about what happens when, like me, the whole system fails on the 110-degree day you actually needed it. The first thing Mennonite households used, and the thing that costs you exactly nothing if you already have a patch of dirt, is the ground itself. A hole dug 4 feet down sits at a near constant 50 to 55 degrees, no matter what the thermometer reads above it, because soil is an extraordinary insulator once you get below the frost line. Root cellars built into hillsides or dug straight beneath a barn floor kept potatoes, carrots, cabbages, and apples fresh from October clear through March, with 0 moving parts and nothing to charge overnight. It's the exact same physics that keeps a modern wine cellar at 55 degrees. The only difference is that a wine cellar comes with a climate control budget and a root cellar comes with a shovel. That comment about the grandmother and the butter stayed with me for the rest of that drive, mostly because it made no sense to me at the time. No fridge, ever, and somehow no spoiled meat either. It turns out the answer has nothing to do with luck, and everything to do with 2 techniques that predate electricity by centuries: salt and smoke. Modern van life solves the meat problem by buying a bigger, colder box. The popular move right now is a 12-volt dual-zone unit, the ICECO being one of the names that keeps showing up in these builds, because it lets you run a freezer compartment and a fridge compartment off the same battery. Dual-zone units like it typically run somewhere in the $600 to $900 range once you factor in the battery capacity needed to actually run a compressor pulling double duty, and that's before you've bought a single sausage to put inside it. It's a genuinely clever piece of engineering. It's also, at its core, a very expensive way to avoid learning 2 skills that used to be common knowledge in every rural household on Earth. Salt works because bacteria need water to multiply, and a heavy enough salt cure pulls water straight out of meat through basic osmosis, leaving behind an environment nothing dangerous can survive in. Mennonite households packed pork and beef in coarse salt inside stoneware crocks, sometimes for weeks, before the meat ever touched smoke. Smoke then finished the job, hung in an earthen basement or a dedicated smokehouse over a slow hardwood fire, usually hickory or apple wood. The meat absorbed compounds that are naturally antibacterial, while the cool, steady humidity of an underground room did the rest. No thermostat, no compressor, no battery to monitor at 2 in the morning. Just geology and chemistry, doing for free what a $900 dual-zone freezer does for a subscription's worth of electricity. Here's the detail that still gets me. Properly salt-cured and smoked meat, hung in the right conditions, didn't last a week. It lasted through an entire winter, sometimes into the following summer, at room temperature, in a system built with a knife, a barrel of salt, and a fire. Compare that to my own setup outside Quartzsite, where a full charge on a name-brand power station bought me, by the manufacturer's own numbers, about 2 days of fridge time before I was hunting for an outlet at a gas station and paying for the privilege of using it. And salt and smoke were only the meat solution. The same households were doing something almost as clever to vegetables, using nothing but a crock, some salt, and thyme. Fermentation is the part of this story that sounds the most like a trick, right up until you understand the chemistry. Pack shredded cabbage into a crock with enough salt, and the salt pulls water out of the cabbage itself, creating its own brine without a drop being added. Naturally occurring bacteria already living on the cabbage leaves, the same family of bacteria found in yogurt, start converting sugar into lactic acid. That acid is the preservative. Within a few weeks, you have sauerkraut that keeps at cellar temperature for the better part of a year, made from 2 ingredients and gravity. Cucumbers, beans, and beets got the same treatment in crock after crock lined up in the same root cellar, doing the temperature work for free. A modern van lifer chasing the same shelf-stable vegetables is usually reaching for freeze-dried pouches instead. Brands like Mountain House, running several dollars per single-serving meal, or hauling around a powered dehydrator that needs 6 to 8 hours of continuous electricity just to dry 1 tray of produce. A decent countertop dehydrator built to survive van life runs somewhere around $200 to $300 before you've dried a single vegetable in it. A crock, a bag of salt, and patience costs less than 1 restaurant meal, one time, ever. Fruit got a different trick, one specific enough that it kept its own name. Pennsylvania Dutch and Mennonite households called it schnitz, thin-sliced apples, sometimes pears, dried on screens in direct sun or strung on thread near the residual heat of a wood stove that was already burning for dinner anyway. Once enough moisture is gone, nothing left behind can support mold, and the slices keep for the better part of a year in nothing more than a cloth sack. Come January, you drop a handful into hot water, and 20 minutes later you've got something close to fresh fruit again, months after the tree it came from went dormant. None of this required a single watt, because none of it was competing with a power bill. It was competing with winter, and winter doesn't negotiate. That's the piece that took me an embarrassingly long time to understand, sitting in that parking lot in Quartzsite, staring at a fridge with a warranty card I couldn't use to unmelt a pound of butter. These weren't primitive workarounds. They were closed-loop systems, tuned over generations, that solved the exact problem the entire van life industry is currently selling you a subscription to solve. One more example, because it's the one that finally made me put my phone down and start taking notes instead of just watching. Eggs are one of the most fragile things you can try to keep in a van, and Mennonite farmers solve that one with wood ash. Fresh eggs, unwashed so they keep their natural coating, packed into a barrel and covered completely in plain ash from the wood stove that was heating the house anyway. The ash raises the pH around the shell just enough to seal the pores and slow the yolk's breakdown to almost nothing. Farmers were pulling edible eggs out of those barrels 2 years later. 2 years from a barrel of fireplace waste, while the egg carton in my van's fridge had a sell-by date of 11 days, and I still managed to miss it. If you're the one actually living in a van right now, none of this is a fun historical aside for you, the way it might be for someone reading it on a laptop at a kitchen table. It's your actual monthly math. Add up what you've spent chasing power this year. The panels, the battery, the fridge, the inverter, the one part that failed in month 4, and the overnight shipping you paid to replace it before the next heat wave. Now add the psychological cost nobody puts a price on, the hours spent checking a battery percentage instead of looking at the actual scenery you supposedly bought the van to see. A root cellar doesn't have a battery percentage. A crock of sauerkraut has never once needed a firmware update. That's not an argument for abandoning every modern convenience and living entirely on schnitz and salted pork, and I'm not about to pretend I dug a root cellar into the shoulder of a highway outside Quartzsite. But the math isn't close, and pretending otherwise is exactly how an entire industry gets to keep charging you a subscription fee for a problem with a free solution sitting in plain sight for over a century. Here's the part that raises the stakes even further, because none of this was a stopgap measure for hard times. It was the default operating system for entire communities, for generations, in every category of food, not just the categories I've already covered. Green beans got strung whole onto plain sewing thread, needles straight through the middle of each pod, and hung in loops from attic rafters where the air moved and the temperature stayed roughly constant year-round. No jar, no lid, no pressure canner, nothing that could shatter or seal wrong. The dried pods, known in the old vocabulary as leather breeches for the way they looked swinging in long brown strips, would keep for years, then get soaked and simmered back into something close to a fresh pot of beans months after the actual bean plant had been plowed under. A single needle and a length of thread did the job that an entire wall of mason jars and a specialized canner do in a modern homestead kitchen, and the thread never cracked in transit down a dirt road the way glass does. That's the actual scale of the thing. This wasn't one clever trick, isolated and quaint. It was a complete, interlocking food security system covering meat, dairy, vegetables, fruit, and eggs, built by people who were simultaneously being pushed off land, crossing oceans, and rebuilding from nothing more than once within a single generation. They didn't have the option of a credit card for a replacement power station. The system had to work every time with materials that cost nothing beyond what the farm already produced. Compare that to an industry currently selling van lifers a lithium battery upgrade as the solution to a problem that same battery will eventually create for someone else, the day it degrades past 80% capacity in year 3 and needs replacing at a cost most people quietly don't mention in the unboxing video. There's one more category nobody talks about in either the van life world or the prepper world, and it might be the cleverest one of all, because it's not really about storing food so much as storing energy. Mennonite households rendered pork fat down over low heat until it separated from the crisp bits of meat still clinging to it, strained it clean, and poured the pure fat into stoneware crocks to set. They called it griebenschmalz, and once it cooled, it looked almost like a jar of pale butter, except it didn't need refrigeration at all. Rendered and properly strained fat has almost no water content left in it, and water is the one thing bacteria actually need to grow. No water, nothing to spoil. A crock of it would sit in a cool cellar for the better part of a year, ready to spread straight onto bread as a full meal on its own, or melted into a pan to cook whatever vegetables came out of the root cellar that week. Gram for gram, rendered fat carries more than double the calories of the protein bars and freeze-dried pouches marketed to van lifers and preppers as emergency calorie density, and those pouches usually run somewhere close to $1.50 per 100 calories once you do the math on the box. A jar of rendered fat made from scraps the household was already producing cost nothing beyond the time it took to stand over a pot and stir. Sheep fat got the same treatment under its own name, Schafschmalz, and it did double duty besides. The same jar that fed a family through a lean month was also the thing you rubbed into cracked hands and boot leather come winter, and occasionally burned in a dish as a crude lamp when the candles ran out. One material, three completely different survival functions, none of them requiring a store run. Think about what that actually replaces in a modern setup. A van lifer worried about running low on calories on a long stretch between towns is reaching for a case of energy bars, or a satellite-based delivery service, or in the more extreme prepper corners of the internet, a 5-gallon bucket of freeze-dried entrees with a 30-year shelf life and a price tag to match. All of it requires either electricity, a supply chain, or both, arriving on a schedule you don't control. A crock of rendered fat sitting under the passenger seat needs precisely nothing from anyone, doesn't care if the nearest town is 4 hours away, and was, until shockingly recently, just what people kept in the pantry because it made sense. That's the piece I keep coming back to. None of it was a survivalist stunt performed for an audience. It was simply how a full pantry worked before anyone had the option to plug it in. I never did get that fridge fixed. I returned it actually 3 weeks later and put the refund toward a second-hand ceramic crock I found at a flea market outside Flagstaff, the same kind those Mennonite root cellars would have had lined up on a shelf a century and a half ago. My girlfriend still brings up that phone screen every time we cross the desert in July, the comment from a total stranger about a grandmother who never once worried about a heat wave. The batteries in that van still die eventually, the way batteries do. The crock just sits there, doing exactly what a crock has always done, on a schedule nobody has to charge overnight. Somewhere outside Quartzsite, there's still a warranty card for a fridge that promised to be complete, sitting in a